Lumos. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. I'm repping my house Gryffindor because today we're talking about Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore, the third film in the Fantastic Beasts franchise. And before I give you guys my thoughts on this movie, make sure to hit that like button, comment down below your thoughts or expectations for Fantastic Beasts 3 if you have not yet seen it, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future reviews like this one. So I enjoy the Harry Potter franchise quite a bit. I love to watch the movies at least once a year. Going down to Universal Orlando in Florida is awesome, and getting to experience Hogwarts and Diagon Alley and all this immersive world-building lore that the Harry Potter franchise has given us is something special. But for the longest time, I have put off the Fantastic Beasts movies because I've had no desire to watch them. So I finally sat down and watched the first two Fantastic Beasts movies before watching this one, and they weren't my favorite. I think the first one was alright, it was a decent enough time, and Crimes of Grindelwald was unbearable for me. I literally struggled so hard to get through that movie. So going into this one, the bar was pretty low for Fantastic Beasts, and I was like, can it really be that bad? I mean, the first two movies aren't that great. And coming out of the theater, I was actually a little bit disappointed with this movie. And I've pinpointed the main reason as to why I feel this emptiness when I watch a Fantastic Beasts movie. It is simply because I'm not that invested in these characters. The first Fantastic Beasts film was all about Newt Scamander and his adventures with these beasts in New York City as he was trying to recapture them. And it had a little bit of this whimsical nature to it. And then as the series has progressed, it's become less about Newt Scamander and more about other characters. We're focusing more on Dumbledore now, played brilliantly by Jude Law, and I can confidently say he is the highlight of this movie. Any scene Jude Law's Dumbledore is in, I was fully invested and engaged, and I'm excited to see his role in the next two movies. But what this franchise has decided to do is introduce so many characters from the start that there are a lot of different through lines in this movie and different side plots that don't really have my full interest. For example, there's the character of Jacob Kowalski, who is a fan favorite and definitely the comedic relief, but aside from being the funny side character, I don't really care too much for this character. The same can be said for the entire crew that is assembled in this movie to try and go find Grindelwald. If it's not Newt or Dumbledore, I'm not really that attached to these characters. In fact, I couldn't really tell you their names or really quote one line they say from the movie, which is never a good sign when I'm looking back at a movie that I just finished watching. Like, the structure of this film, just like the other two, is constantly in and out of so many different storylines. Not only does it get somewhat hard to follow, but it just feels sort of draining when you're watching it in the theater. For me, I got a little bit tired watching the movie. It was just so sporadic and frankly uninteresting. You have a movie called Secrets of Dumbledore, and Dumbledore doesn't really have as much screen time as you might hope in this movie. He's definitely the MVP, and his scenes have the biggest impact, but you would think this movie would focus more on him than it actually did. And a major issue I have with this movie is that it has all these events that happen in the first two acts, and then it feels like it doesn't really lead to anything. It feels like our time was wasted, and it feels like the characters and the narrative even acknowledge that, which is never something you want when you head into the third act of a movie. Granted, I think the third act does pick up tremendously. It's got quite more entertaining bits, but the build-up to get there was just not worth it in my eyes. I felt the pace rather dragging. Even the stakes felt somewhat questionable by the end of the movie because it is a prequel film. The big bad villain of this franchise, Grindelwald, is obviously recast as Mads Mikkelsen in this film, and I think he does a solid job with the screen time he's given. He's more of this looming threat, and unlike Voldemort, who I feel like his name instills fear in people and people are afraid to even mention this guy, Grindelwald doesn't really have that presence developed yet, so I don't really buy into him as this overall menacing, big, bad threat for the Fantastic Beasts movies, and it's kind of unfortunate because he is the main antagonist of this film, and you want to really feel these stakes with him. But I don't feel that terrified when he's on screen as much as I should be. I don't think that has anything to do with Johnny Depp's performance in the first two movies or even Mads Mikkelsen's performance in this film. I just think it has to do with the writing and creating situations that are lacking any real tension. The opening scene of this movie is fantastic. As we see Dumbledore and Grindelwald together, it sets the stakes for the movie, but it goes so far off course with these sporadic side storylines with characters that are just inherently less interesting than Dumbledore, whose name is in the title. There's this whole plot line involving these creatures, and then there's a whole nother plot line involving a political campaign race, and it just feels so convoluted to the point where it loses the core magical elements of the Harry Potter films and the whole Wizarding World vibe. Magical escapism is what I go to for these movies, and this one tried to put me to sleep a few times. It's also worth noting that every time I watch one of these movies, and especially in Secrets of Dumbledore, there's a few moments where it tries to hit you over the head with the fact that, hey, we're still in the Harry Potter universe, don't forget it. Like, the imagery of Hogwarts definitely makes you feel a little nostalgic, but it dissipates after a few seconds when you take a step back and realize, seeing Hogwarts reminds me of characters that I love, in Harry, Ron, Hermione, and those characters are lacking in this movie. The use of the Harry Potter theme was obviously chill-inducing in the theater. It feels cheap almost because, yes, you're gonna get the chills out of me and have that emotional response when I hear that score. but then when you cut from the imagery of Hogwarts to these bland characters, it just loses me. The structure of this movie just really irks me and somewhat confuses me, because early on, it set the stakes up high as the emotions were felt as we see this relationship, this past relationship between Dumbledore and Grindelwald is laid out, and you feel it in your heart. You buy into their past, and it feels like, we're building to this ultimate duel or showdown between them, and then you even get some cool wand action in the first 15 minutes, and I was like, okay, this feels like a total breath of fresh air, and might even reach the level of a Harry Potter movie. And then, unfortunately, it just spirals into another one of these over-convoluted plot lines with tons of side characters and storylines getting all crossed together that it unfortunately loses focus and becomes somewhat of a bore. If you're going into this movie expecting a lot of wand action, which I know the movie's trying to advertise it as that, I would kind of level your expectations, because that's not really the case here. There is one standout sequence in my mind that I absolutely adored with Dumbledore and a certain character, and from a visual perspective, it was so engaging and unlike anything we've seen in this franchise. I was fully locked in, and I really want to rewatch that scene on a loop because it is a standout. It is a gorgeously directed and visually stunning scene. And the performances across the board in this movie are really solid. It's not the fault of Eddie Redmayne's Newt Scamander, who's kind of unfortunately taken a back seat in this franchise. It's not Jude Law or Mads Mikkelsen's fault. I think it's just the clear direction of this franchise and the fact that it almost feels like they're trying to stretch it to 5 movies. Because by the end of this movie, it feels like there's really no purpose to continue onward. They're still going to make 2 more Fantastic Beasts movies, and I'm honestly baffled and have no clue how they're going to write scripts for this, because the story feels somewhat complete in my eyes. It feels a little open-ended at the end, but the finale was so lackluster, I just feel like there's been no payoff in this franchise. And again, I want to love the Fantastic Beasts movies, but every time I watch them, I just think to myself, why am I not watching Harry Potter instead? So at the end of the day, if you're a hardcore fan of the Wizarding World or Harry Potter, there's going to be a lot of things for you to enjoy in this movie, and you might even be a pretty big fan of it. I think it's definitely better than Crimes of Grindelwald, and it's almost on par with the first Fantastic Beasts movie, but as a singular individual movie, it's all over the place. It's got a very messy script with way too much going on. And the key emotional crux of this movie, the relationship between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, is not featured nearly enough, which kind of removes me from the movie in a sense. The performances are great. There's some visually stunning sequences and some pretty cool action bits. I think there could have been a lot more wand action in this movie. But overall, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore was another meh entry in the Wizarding World franchise. I'd give this movie 2.5 out of 5 stars, or 50%. It has its highlight moments, but at the end of the day, it unfortunately falls short when the Wizarding World standard has been set so high. But what do you guys think of this movie? Let me know in the comments down below. What are your expectations if you have not yet seen it? What is your favorite Fantastic Beasts film? Have you seen any of the Fantastic Beasts movies? I want to talk about that in the comments down below. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe and hit that notification bell, as I'm going to have some more Wizarding World content coming out the week of the movie. But thank you guys again for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.